All right. So, everybody has an agenda in front of them. The agenda usually takes an hour and 15 minutes, and we try to save the last half hour for questions. So if you have a question, try to hold on to it unless you absolutely must ask the question while we're discussing it. I do appreciate everybody being here. I'm sure everybody knows who's here. You know, we have Stuart, Vice President. We have Kelly, our recording secretary. Everybody knows Donald, our property manager. We have Joanne Robinson, our treasurer. We have Jerry Satowski, and we have Eva Richeski, the Vice President of WPRF. The purpose of this program that I do it twice a month. The officers are done on a limited basis, 12 to 15 people. That's done on the second Friday of the month. And this third Friday of the month, we do it here. I have this room booked. Can we have one conversation, please? Thank you. I booked this room till the end of December, and hopefully we'll be going on to next year. And it is to inform you of what UCO does, what WPRF does, and what your responsibility is if you are an officer of the building or if you wish to become an officer of the building. Not everybody in here is an officer. This meeting is open to anybody. Unit owners, renters, so try to keep your questions to at the end. We're going to follow the outline so everybody can go through it. What does UCO do? We oversee major contracts, security, transportation, roads, cables, and insurance. Does everybody know why we do that? Because every association here is bound by the bilateral agreement. In the bilateral agreement, which was signed a long time ago, gives UCO the responsibility of nurturing these contracts. Included in those contracts are things that have not been followed. Some associations have strayed off. They do certain things they're not supposed to be doing. And I know that that's created some negative feedback. People think, that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. But unfortunately, the bilateral agreement, if you don't know it, if you've never seen it, if you've never read it, send Donald an email, ucomaintenance@gmail.com, and he will forward you the contract that was previously signed by your buildings, by your associations. UCO office. What do we do in the UCO office? I know everybody thinks all we do is drink coffee and have a good time. I wish, but we do investigations, we do barcodes, we do gate passes, we do notarization work. We have 3 notaries for the building. That means that anything pertaining to the building, if you're transferring property in the state of Georgia, don't come here. We don't notarize it. We're doing it just for the associations. If you need a contract that needs to be notarized, transfer a deed, anything along those lines, that we will do for you. We have created a new website. It used to be David's blog. That in turn has been turned into the unitedcivic.org, which Joanne put together, and all the information that we possibly can is on that website. We update it almost on a daily basis. It is partially interactive, so if you have some good comments or bad comments, put them on there. We try not to share all the comments, and we will answer anything within reason.
There you go.
Some of the paperwork that we process, investigation forms for sales and rentals. Now, like I said, part of the bilateral agreement, when you read it, it says that UCO will do all your investigations. Some associations have decided to do their own investigations. Some go to Seacrest, okay? That's created a little bit of an issue now because, one, We have gone back to pre-COVID. Every certificate of occupancy, whether it's a rental extension or a sale, must be typed up. In order to get it typed, you're welcome to come to the UCO office, and we will type one up for you. If it is a rental extension, okay, we need a copy of the lease. Current lease, not a lease from 5 years ago. Now, Eva was nice enough, since people were complaining that we're only open 3 hours a day, she has offered the ID office. You can go to the ID office. An officer brings, not the renter, not the owner, one of the board members brings the deed to the office, and they will type up a rental extension for you. If you have an occupancy form, that's someone that's not on the deed, okay, but is living with someone in there, whether it's an aide, boyfriend, girlfriend, brother, sister, mother, whatever, you need a copy of last year's form. Whoever gave permission for that person to be there, you bring that to either us or WPRF, and we will type one up for you. No charge, we do it. Why do you want to use UCO for your investigation? Well, very simple. If you have a question when your investigation comes back, and you feel that you're not sure if you should accept or reject an individual, included with UCO's investigation is a legal opinion of whether you can or cannot reject an individual. Seacrest doesn't offer that. If you do it on your own, doesn't do that. If you reject an individual based on what our attorney has told you that you had the option or reason to be able to reject, and you get sued, we have there's a $5,000 deductible on that lawsuit. You're covered for that $5,000 deductible. Okay? Now, for the people that are using their own investigation or Seacrest investigation, if you, to do a rental, you now have to go back to Seacrest to have them type up the form. They're not very happy about that. Okay? But you chose to do that. Now, if you did your own, there's a format which WPRF will accept, has to follow the format, otherwise they're not going to give it to you. And as I know there's a little bit of a kickback on this, people are not happy about that. They feel they shouldn't have to do it. I have one person that wants to be paid $100 every time she comes to the office. Well, unfortunately, this is the procedure. It's not that hard. Okay, it requires, and one of the people say, well, why are you doing it? We're doing it because pre-COVID, that's the way it was done. Now, we were giving out blank forms, and things were happening that should not have been happening. People were given certificates of occupancies, extensions, while the board didn't know anything about it. So that's why we request that a board member bring it in. And trust me, when I tell you, I have board members that say, well, here's your lease, go to WPRF, go to UCO, and they'll type it up for you. We will not. It has to be a board member that comes in. Everybody clear?
Excuse me.
Okay? Yes. Yes.
Why can't we kind of automate it? Because sometimes it's hard to get a board member in
That's
and
your-
do it through DocuSign.
Not available at this time.
Okay.
Okay,
So
doesn't mean it's not
DocuSign.
going to happen somewhere down the road, but right now, this is the procedure that we have, and this is what you gotta follow. And if you don't have officers, you have to figure it out. One of the biggest problems, besides giving out paperwork that nobody knows anything about, we had a situation a month ago where the president of the building knew that a renter his lease was up in 2 weeks, and she was the only officer there. She decided to go on vacation, and then she called me and said, well, I'm in New York, and said, I need you to give it to him because I'm okaying it. Doesn't work that way.
No, that wasn't my intent.
No, I'm just
DocuSign
explaining, DocuSign is, we're not at that point yet.
Okay.
We're not at that point. I'm
That's
just,
all I asked.
we're moving slowly. A snake, it might happen, but right now, these are the procedures that we have. Okay? I explained to you why you should be using UCO to do your investigations. Now, the village is broken up into 4 parts. The reason for that is that you have 4 vice presidents. Each vice president has a quadrant that they are responsible for. If you don't know who your quadrant VP is, stop by the office, introduce yourself, and we'll give you a copy of the sheet, or you'll be able to meet with the 4 vice presidents to help you out. We're not attorneys. Don't come in for legal advice, because the advice that we're going to give you, contact your attorney. They're there to assist you. They're not there to hold your hand, but they will help you through certain day-to-day things that happen in the building. Okay? Don't ask for legal advice. Trust me, we've had people that come out, they come out from investigation, they got a package, and they say, well, how do I reject this person? And they'll go to Stuart, who sits right outside the investigation office. Stuart says, I can't, this is not my job. Okay, so be vigilant. If you're an officer, make sure that you follow the proper procedure. We do not give legal advice. That's not what we are. A lot of associations are choosing to self-manage. Not a good thing, but I'm sure that some people could do a good job. But you want to have a management company to help you with your annual meeting. You want to make sure that the proper paperwork is sent to all your unit owners. You must have a period of time where each individual unit owner is notified if you're going to have an annual meeting, if you need to have a first mailing, second mailing, and you must have an annual meeting. During the annual meeting, you must take attendance. Whether you have a quorum or you don't have a quorum is irrelevant. You still need to notify that you've had that annual meeting. Your management company will also help you with your annual budgets. Not everybody's an accountant, not everybody's a business person. Would you trust your management company to be 100% on their budget? No. You need to be involved. You need to have an annual meeting beforehand. Right now, there's 2 pieces of legislations that passed July 1st. One is House Bill 1021, and the second one is Condo 3.0, which now requires that every association have 4 meetings a year. One being your annual meeting, one being your budget meeting, and then 2 other general meetings. After your annual meeting, there's 2 forms that need to be filled out. If you use Seacrest, if you use Pruitt, there's a form that they give you. That is to notify Sunbiz who your officers are. There's another form for delegates, which you have to come and get at the UCO office. That is so that when we have our monthly meetings, we know who can represent your building for you. Now, there seems to be some buildings, well, I'm the president, I'm the only one that can represent my building. That's not okay. You can put anybody that's on your board can be representing in case you're not there. And I personally recommend that you do have more than one person there to represent you. Sunbiz needs to be filed annually. The delegates form needs to be filed annually. There are associations that say, well, it's the same board, it's been the same board for 5 years, we're not going to file. Okay? The other problem that you run into is you have a board member that either dies, gets sick, sells his apartment, and leaves. And he hands you a piece of paper and says, I'm no longer secretary or I'm no longer president, and I'm done. You need to file a paper with Sunbiz. Use your management company for that. There's a fee that's involved. and replace it. A lot of people don't know that. They just, well, I resigned. And we've had people coming in that the president or has gone for 3 years, or the president is dead, and the association never changed any paperwork. So the update on the paperwork helps us out. If we have an issue with your building, Donald can go on there, and if we have the right documentation, it makes our life a lot easier instead of trying to trace you down. The other thing, your management company, a lot of associations are not using your management company to file letters. You have a unit owner that's delinquent, stay on top of it. Make sure that your management company sends them a letter. You owe us money. Okay? Don't let it wait. Violation letter. You have an individual that, as we've all seen Donald's reports, just decides, well, John Jones is coming in, I'm gonna redo my whole apartment. The first line of defense is send Donald. Second one is have the management company send a letter to the individual that they're not allowed to do what they're doing. Tell them to stop. And third, you're gonna have to hire an attorney. We're working very diligently to try to prevent some of these people from coming in and doing work. A lot of permits are being issued, well, I'm only gonna replacing a sink, and the next thing we know, the apartment is gutted, okay? We're going to stop that, we're trying to. Monday, Donald and I had a meeting with the building department. They're going to be pushing, we're going to be pushing, we're doing everything we can to help prevent this from happening, but we also need the associations. When Donald says you gotta get an attorney, we don't wanna hear, I don't wanna get an attorney, it costs too much money. You're going to need legal representation. You're gonna have to follow through, okay? It's a fact of life. If you have, I explained about the delegates forms, make sure you come to the office, pick one up. Has to be signed, has to have your corporate seal on there, and the most important thing, no chickens can fill that form out. It needs to be legible. If you can type it, type it. We actually had, last month, somebody dropped it off, and we asked the person to fill it out, to come in and read it. She couldn't read it. She could not read her own handwriting. Now, so please make it legible. Try to have the correct phone numbers. I know people say, well, I'll miss one number. Make sure that the numbers and the information you give us is correct. It helps us to do a better job to serve you. Any questions with that? Oh, great. Okay. Why do you need an attorney? Well, you need an attorney because UCO doesn't have an attorney to give you advice. Vice presidents are not here to give you advice. Plus, you need to update your governing documents. And that should be done on a regular basis. Regular basis. And we have somebody in this room that's still running with the documents that were issued in the 1970s. They didn't even write root. You're still running with the original documents. And there's a few of those associations. Now, the 1999 model documents were good. They weren't perfect, and so many changes have taken place that you need to update them. A lot of individuals over the years have decided to update their bylaws, and they were done either by an officer of the building or someone that wasn't really well prepared, and their bylaws do not match their governing documents. What do I mean by that? Well, you passed a bylaw 10 years ago that you're not allowed to have a dog. But your governing documents don't say anything about it. Can you enforce that? Absolutely not. So that's why you need an attorney. When you update your bylaws, he has to make sure that your articles of incorporation, your bylaws, and are all in sync, that they're all the same. Right, besides being recorded, it has to be recorded. I know when I moved into my building, the past president, she did like 13 bylaw changes. Guess what? She never filed any of them. They don't exist. Exactly. So it's up to you if you're an officer. If you're planning to be an officer, or you want to be a good officer, you need to stay on top of it. Now, the last July 1st was awakening for a lot of people. It's going to be tougher to be a board member. Okay. While I have Eva here, I'm going to ask, okay, if you haven't, before I give it to Eva to say a few words, because she loves to talk like I do, there's an asset recovery program. Does everybody know what that is? No? Okay. This was set up about 6, 7 years ago between WPRF and Ed Black. If you have a unit that is more than 4 months in arrears, has not paid any money to the association, you should be looking into foreclosure. You shouldn't. We have associations, people come in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, that an apartment has been empty and nobody's been making payments. Well, as an officer, it's your responsibility, because if you look at your, your budget, there's a line in there. And that line is where every association, every unit owner in your association is paying bad debt for those people that are not paying. The asset recovery program was set up where if you're owed money, you can contact WPRF. I used to call Monica, but now we're going to be talking to Eva. She will check and see if WPRF is owed money, because that's the glitch. They have to owe money to the association, and they have to owe money to WPRF. Should they owe money to WPRF, they will give it to their legal department. They will put a contract together, and you sign that contract, and WPRF will do all the work that is required to either recuperate your money or do foreclosure. Why do you want to do that program? Because most people don't know. You go to a lawyer, and the lawyer says, well, we're going to do a foreclosure. I need a check for $1,500. Okay? That's number one. Well, guess what? That dies every 12 months. So if a new board comes into place, or you forget, or the attorney forgets to let you know that you have to go give them another check, you have to start all over again. You have that foreclosure that you started 14 months ago, doesn't exist anymore. If you use WPRF, they stay on top of it, they make sure. Personally, the last foreclosure that I did, using an attorney, took 7.5 years and cost me $10,000. Okay? Most money that you can recoup is a year's worth of maintenance. The last one we did with WPRF was done in 14 months. And it didn't cost us anything. We recouped all the money that was in the arrears. The lady was deceased, the family walked away. I behoove you it helps you to go contact me, contact Eva, and we'll go with it. It's a time-saving event. A lot of people do not know that this program exists. It does exist. So, Eva, tell them what WPRF does.
Well, we handle everything. We handle everything that has to do with recreation. I think most importantly, what we house here is the WPR office, where you can make your payments, you can get coupons, and more importantly than that is the ID office, where all IDs would be given and get guest passes. I know Fausta wanted me to mention something about the asset recovery program, and to put it into better perspective, it was born of the real estate collapse in 2008 because resident owners were walking away from their apartments in droves, and certain buildings found themselves with 2, 3, and 4 buildings that had been abandoned, and they were responsible for all the fees. So everything that Fausta said is correct. It certainly would be beneficial. There is one issue that if there is a mortgage, we don't move forward with that. It has to be owned free and clear. If it's not owned free and clear, there's no reason to contact us because we just don't handle it. The other thing I want to tell you is that yes, WPRF, our attorneys do all the work. But for any monies that are had, WPRF will take the rec fees first. They will take all the fees to reimburse themselves for the legal fees, and anything that is left over then will be distributed and the building gets paid. As Fausto said, they recovered everything, and with the value of the apartments now, there's usually enough money where that is the case. The buildings will also be made whole. So just wanted to add that. You want me to go through all of WPRF, or do you want me to go to the end? All right. So if you use the facilities, you know that we have two clubhouses, the main clubhouse here, and then we have one over at Hastings, which houses the gym, an aerobics room, and for many people that's important is the resistance pool. ID office is an important topic to discuss. WPRF IDs are on loan to you for good behavior and for current WPRF accounts. They can be taken back from you for not following the rules and for not keeping your account current. People argue that we have too many rules, and well, we've had them for 50 plus years, but I can tell you that the list of rules have grown as people find loopholes and cause issues, and then we have to add something else to the list. So it's been a combination of what we put in place originally and then things that residents have done. Because when you've got 14,000 people in season, you need to all pretty much move in the same direction for us to be able to run smoothly. And so we just look for cooperation and good behavior. Everybody that comes to the ID office has an expectation that they're going to walk away with one. And that is not often the case. The paperwork has to be correct. We have to have everything that we need in order to process. The buildings are responsible for providing us the proper paperwork. It's up to the buildings to tell WPRF which ID we're going to give you, whether you're going to be a resident, whether it's an occupant, or you've been approved for rental, okay? So if that paperwork is not correct, my staff is going to let the person know that this is what we need. Many times people get very angry because their expectation was not met, and the staff is dealt with sometimes in a very ugly manner. So I'm hoping that I can raise people's consciousness about following the golden rule, and that is that you want to be treated, or you want to treat others as you would want to be treated. What's also important is anytime you have a phone number change, you have an address change, ID office is the keeper of all the information on the residents. So that way if we have to reach out to contact you, not to solicit, but to tell you that something's wrong and we need you to pay attention to something, many times people have changed phone numbers, you know, and then we're left then trying to use snail mail. So it is very important. Another important thing is old IDs that are not turned in on an apartment can hinder the issuance of a new ID. So it's always important to turn in the old IDs, whatever that is, all right? And the next thing I would talk to is expired IDs. Expired means no longer valid, yet many of the guests continue to try to use them. So when you have guests, they should only use the cards through the date that it's valid, and then it should be turned in for a new one if they would like to stay. Because both security teams do an excellent job at recovering these IDs, but at the rate that they come in, I think that we can do better. You know, people just try to take advantage. And we know the difference between right and wrong. Just wanted to mention security contract. While UCO has one, so does WPRF. We have one with the same company, but if you'll note, and if you don't know, the vehicles are different colors. Many times somebody would call for security to come to a pool area, and because the vehicles were the same color, they'd see a UCO security officer drive by and then call me all upset that they didn't do their job and they didn't stop as they should have. So we've now differentiated the vehicles, and the white vehicle is WPRF's, and it also says WPRF on it. I'd also want to mention that if in doubt, you're involved in a situation or you're witnessing a situation, if it's life safety, call 911. If they're breaking my rules, call my security team, which the numbers are posted, okay? Love to hear from the residents. You can reach out to me, come to my office. We have suggestion slips. You can complain, you can tell us, hey, great job, you can make suggestions. I also tell you, you are our eyes and our ears. You go and WPRF, so if you see something, say something. The information is always welcome, and we act on it if we find that it's necessary. I think I just covered clubhouse rules and signage. I talked about assisted recovery program. I think I'll wrap it up with that. Thank you.
I have a question. Some of my renters have complained to me that the only way to get any information, any passes or anything, is that a board member comes to do it. Many association board members are snowbirds. So if anything happens between summertime or spring or fall, they can't get anything done. Because a board member, I know I personally had to go to UCO to hand in paperwork. If I'm not here, if anybody, let's say all my board members, which a lot of associations have board members that are not here, how does that work?
Hello, sir. Okay, yeah, I thought that might be the case. Yeah, look, it's a bit of an inconvenience to have a board member come in and do the business of the association. The reason we require this is because by doing it any other way, occasionally you'll find that someone is living in your building that you did not authorize to live there. And very often, those unauthorized residents are people you don't want to be living with. They're undesirable. I'm going to finish. They're undesirable people. So what we're doing is trying to be very careful that you, the board, fully aware who lives in your building. This is a safety issue. All right? Now, I totally get it. My own association, my wife and I are the only ones in residence right now. Two are in Quebec, one's in England, and New York, right? We're lucky, we have two, right? My wife and I and I work at UCO. But you also have a manager, or you should have a manager. And that's what managers do, the legwork for you. That's what you pay them for. So you're not out, your manager is always there.
In other words, if I have Seacrest as my,
Your manager can always step in for a
that's
board.
all I needed to hear. That's
Yeah,
it.
real cool. We want you to understand why we're doing this. It's not that we don't trust you, it's because we don't want you to trust us. We want you to know what's going on in your building.
See, I'm the president of my association.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that has the seal. And I happen to be, my wife is also the treasurer, so one of us has the seal. So if I'm in New York,
Right.
the paperwork will come to New York, I'll seal it, and I can send it back to Seacrest and they can...
All right, I'm gonna tell you something right now. Don't take offense to this. That seal shouldn't be leaving the property.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it's illegal for that seal to leave more than 40 miles from your apartment. Now, that's just how it is. I don't make the laws. I can only tell you what they
So
are.
how does that work for an association that's not here 6 months?
Well,
a year?
in my
Keep it
association,
in your condo.
this, excuse me, honey, I'm gonna answer your Honor's question. Number one, there could be more than one seal. There's no law against it. I always tell people they're not given out by the Vatican. You can go on Amazon and get another one. But typically the seal stays with the secretary. The seal is the secretary's tool, right? But just like the checkbook is the treasurer's tool. But basically, when you're back home, you're going back home, leave the seal with a trusted board member or even a unit owner. Make sure it stays on the property, or get two. That's what I can tell you. You got to trust your board members. You know, that's part of it too. But you got to manage it. What would you do? What would you do? I don't know if you live in a single-family home or a co-op or a condo up north. But let's say you live in a co-op in Brooklyn. You're here. Who does and you're on the board there. Who does your business for you? Your agent, right? It's the same. Let your manager do it.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, hi, Grace.
Hi,
Nice to see you.
good to be here.
All right. Hi,
I
Lynn.
had car trouble. Eva, have you found that, I know there's a lot of owners who own multiple units. Have you found that they only register, let's say, with one unit, or can? I don't think they can. But they only pay dues to do WPRF for one unit. And
No. No,
so
each
you have
individual
people who are
unit has
paying
its,
for multiple units.
each individual unit when purchased has its own rec documents, and that binds them into making payments. So they can own 50 units in here. They are making 50 different payments for each apartment that they own. To
That's what this-
WPRF and to UCO, all the fees apply.
But that's what they're supposed to do.
That's what they're supposed to do.
But they may not be doing it. In other words, this is in reference to the recovery program, because let's say I know there's people in my building who own multiple units throughout the village. If they're not paying WPRF, let's say from my building, they still get a pass because they're paying someplace else. When they stop paying our dues, would we be able to be entitled to WPRF's recovery program?
For your building, yes.
No, I think I'm catching what
Well,
Lynn's.
first of all, when they come in on good faith as new owners, or, right, they're going to get their ID. And then somewhere along the way, they may stop making their payments or never even start. But when they come in as a new owner, they get their ID. They stop making payments again after 4 months.
I don't
There has to
think
be
anybody-
no mortgage on the account in order to be approved for the asset recovery program.
Eva, I think I'm
I don't think
catching,
that's my
I think I'm the only one catching what
Yeah,
Lynn's
I-
after. Let me,
Sure.
let me, Dan, do this one. Lynn, I think what you're saying is, and we do know, this morning I tracked down one that owns 15 units between him, his wife, and his son. Okay. Let's say 3 of those units, he elects not to make his WPRF payments, but since he's making his payments on the one that he lives in, he still has access to the facility. I don't think this is something we've ever had to deal with before. Maybe it's something we need to look at. If you don't make payments on any of your 15 units, I would posit that you don't deserve to use our facilities.
He
But that's-
only
that's
gets
a lit-
one ID for one, he only is allowed, you could have 50 apartments, he only gets one ID.
Right, but
As
if he
long as
doesn't,
he's current on that one, there's no, we can't do anything. It's up to the other buildings to follow up and make sure
Eva,
that.
would you say that's a legal question? Because that's a curveball I'm thinking about now.
Well, yes, I mean, it's difficult to even get it from them, because they generally, they're snowbirds and they come and go. It's very hard to track them. I don't even know that they're using the facility. Most people, we have a lot of people that live here that do not use the facilities at all, but they have the ID, and their main function for our ID is to use it to identify themselves to get in and out of the gate, and to get a barcode from UCO. Okay? So, but UCO can turn off the barcode. We
Yeah.
have no way of turning off the ID, so to speak, where it would signal to us that it needs to be taken, because we do have a long list of delinquencies, unfortunately. Some very small amounts, but some really large ones. So,
But my question still hasn't been answered. Would they be entitled, since they are paying on one, but let's say not my building, would they be entitled to the recovery program if they're not paying in my building, but they still have the ID card for the other buildings? That's
so, okay, so they can only have an ID for the unit that they reside, where they're receiving their mail.
okay, so they wouldn't be entitled. My building would not be entitled if they're not paying.
Not if they're keeping WPRF current. They can be delinquent with you, but as long as they're keeping WPRF current, then we would not move forward on the asset recovery program.
Okay, but if they're not with us, then they wouldn't be entitled.
If they live in another building that they're getting their mail and that's where they live, but they have an apartment in your building and they're not paying you and they're not paying us, then yes. Even though they are in good standing with the unit that they're supposedly living in, their other units, if they're not paying and there's no mortgage, can be considered for the asset recovery program. Does that answer your question?
I guess.
Almost?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
This is why you need every association board to be vigilant. When you get those financial reports, make sure that somebody is not a year in arrears. My thing is very simple, 120 days, I contact management company to send them a letter, you're in arrears. Okay? If I don't get a response, the next month, I will start foreclosure procedure. I have a person in my building that just fought with me to be on the board and is now 6 months in arrears. And he just got the letter that he's no longer on the board, number one, and I'm gonna foreclose on his apartment. Because he only pays once every 6 months. That's his policy.
This one is tough because these are your neighbors, and occasionally neighbors get into financial difficulty. It happens. Unfortunately, that's why being on a board is tough. You really need to set the same standard every single time. In my building, it's 30 days, letter from the property manager. 60 days, letter from the lawyer, Mark. 90 days, Mark places the lien. 120 days, he starts foreclosure every time. This way, no one can say I gave forbearance to a person who's a friend of mine. It was described to me that if a board gives forbearance to a particular individual, they are in effect giving a no-interest loan to a favored unit owner, and you're not authorized to do that. None of us are.
Two things I skipped over real quick. In order to get a barcode, you must have a car that's registered in your name, and you must have a Century Village ID. In the past, the car had to be registered in Century Village. We've done away with that. Two very simple things: ID in your name, registration in your name. Okay? If you are a unit owner, you need to get that updated whenever you renew the registration on your car. We've been talking about this for 3 years, and we still have people. I've never done this before. I've had a barcode for 20 years, even though we only had him for 10, but he's never had to update it. You have to come in, you have to update it. We've instituted a program now where if your barcode lane doesn't work, we notify you either via letter, via a postcard, to come into the office and update your information. The other thing that there's a little gray area, which is not, we have what's called a gate pass. A gate pass is issued by UCO for no more than 6 months, cost you $10, and that gets the person through the gate. That's all it does. Can't ride the buses, you can't go to the clubhouse. If you want an aide or a brother, sister, friend to go to the shows, to be able to, you have to go to WPRF and you have to get a guest pass. There seems to be a little confusion. There should be no confusion. One is to use the facility and one is not. Okay, if you have somebody that you're gonna be gone and you want somebody to come in and check your apartment while you're gone for 4 months, you get him a 4-month pass. He shows that with his driver's license and you can go to the apartment. Okay? Now, if you have somebody in your building that we used to send letters out, but a lot of them were coming back because either whoever it was going to, which was usually the president, either gave us the wrong address or they didn't live here or whatever. That every time a gate pass was issued, we notified the board president. So if you see a stranger walking down the hallway, you knew that apartment 201 got a gate pass for someone. We stopped doing that because the return rate was like 50–60%. So it was a waste of postage and time on our part. But there's nothing wrong. If you're walking and you see somebody stranger there, I don't know. The other thing that Eva touched on that I didn't, there's been a discussion as to, do I call security? Somebody's breaking the window, pulling the door lock, and I called security and they didn't show up. You should be doing 911. It's a 911 call. When the sheriff comes through the door, through our gate, the rover will follow him to the facility. But we've had people, well, I watched a guy pulling every door handle in the parking lot, and I called security at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he never showed up. It's not his job. That's a 911 call. The sheriff, because if he shows up and he sees that, what is he going to do? He's got to dial 911. He has no authority to stop, so dial 911 first. Okay? Yeah, sure.
Sure. Now that we brought up AIDS, there are two types. You've got one that's been vetted by a company and that will wear an ID issued by the company and is coming in and out of the village to help the person that's in your building. And then there are those people that may not be able to afford those higher rates and they have family and friends that are stepping forward, okay? We have personal aid IDs. They're free. They're issued every 3 months, all right? And we do it that way because the aids can change, so we don't need to give them something that's good for 6 months or a year, so that way they can just come and renew every 3 months. That pass does not allow them to use the facilities, all right? They can come and watch the aides swim in a pool, but they're not to use the facility. But I find that many buildings, the boards are trying to get them occupant IDs, and that, unless they're living with the person and taking care of them, is the only time they would get an occupant ID. Otherwise, they should be getting a personal aid ID. All right, so I just want to clarify that. That's very important. Sometimes we've had aids, people bring in aids, personal aids, that created such problems for the buildings. So this way, again, all you have to do is let us know that they're creating the problem, and I don't have to give them the ID, and this makes it much more difficult, but it gives you some teeth in dealing with the situation. Okay?
Also, you notice if you go around the village, excuse me, there are some associations that have no trespassing signs issued by the sheriff's office. And that gives you a lot more strength if you see somebody that you don't recognize, like Fausto says, checking car doors, checking apartment doors, and you have that no trespassing sign, your first call is to the sheriff, and the sheriff can come and arrest that person. So there's no charge. There's no charge getting that sign. All there is you get a charge just for the pole to put it up on, but I certainly would go ahead and think about having it for your association.
If you're bored, if you want to have the sheriff's department no trespassing sign, which I highly recommend, you stop at UCO, we have the application for it. The only cost to you is to purchase the signs. That's an enforceable no trespassing sign. To just put a sign up that say no trespassing, if the person's a Century Village resident, doesn't have to abide by it, the police can't enforce. So if you need it, just stop by UCO. We'll show you what to do.
To the gentleman before, you should have at least 1 or 2 board members staying in your building at all times. You just need to work that out. I know you think it's not, as we go on and some of the new laws that are coming into effect, you're going to do that. You're going to have somebody there to watch over your building. We're going to go off because I want Donald to explain about some of the issues that we're having of unpermitted work, unpermitted boards not staying and watching what's going on. I'll give you an example. Yesterday morning at 11:30, a gentleman came in and said, well, I went to WPRF and they gave me a form and I was told to come here and you're going to let my contractor come in and do work on my apartment. And I said, do you reside here? He goes, no, I'm a unit owner. And I said, well, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. He goes, well, my apartment is gutted and I got to bring my contractor in. I said, well, did you contact the board? And he said, I don't know anybody on the board. I said, well, do you realize that you need to talk to the board, you need to have insurance, you got to have licenses? And the gentleman was not very happy with me. Jerry was there. He was shaking his head because I don't know if he just bought the apartment or he's been stopped. And that's why I'm going to turn over to Donald to explain to you what we're doing so that we're trying to help you, the boards. But the most important thing, that if you have an issue, you let us know. We're going to do some of the work, but you're going to have to get an attorney. Go ahead, Donald.
Hold on. Before
Go ahead,
that,
Julius.
Sure.
I have a question on the
Sure.
prior subject. No
Julius, can you speak up a
trespass.
little?
There's the microphone right here.
Speak up, so speak up.
I've got a microphone right
There you go,
here.
you can sit and
Thank
talk.
you. Thank you very much. No trespassing, is that enforceable against other associations? In other words, if I have a pool that's private,
Which you do,
which I do, but we have trespassers,
Get the green sign,
get the sign,
100%.
and I can enforce it against another association.
Association, no, the individual who is trespassing.
Yes, but the association gave them permission to come to my pool, that's why I asked.
Well, that and a token won't get you on the F train, Julius, but if there's a person who doesn't belong and you have the green signs, you as the president of your association or of the pool association has the right to trespass that person. They catch him again, they can be arrested. I'll give you an example, Julius. We still have a fellow, he's really old now, lives in an Andover building, and he's a registered sex offender, and he's got a lot of weird stuff going on. He's a pervert, right? And one of his tricks when I first got here was he would walk straight up the Andover Street, what is that, Hampshire Street, and walk through all the buildings on the pretense that he was trying to keep out of the sun to get to the bus stop on the main road. Meanwhile, he's peeking in people's windows because he's a weirdo. Unfortunately, everybody put up those trespassing signs, but the police would not enforce that because he is a Century Village resident and this is Century Village. So each of those associations up the line put the green signs up, and that broke it up. He's smart enough to know, as a convicted felon, not to cross the line of a green sign. So Julius, just let me know and I'll get you the application.
I'm sorry?
Just stop at Yuko, I'll give you the application, it's easy. All right, Fausto asked me to talk to you for a minute on a growing problem here at Century Village. If you get my report, read the newspaper, Yuko Reporter, gut renovations that are either unauthorized by the board or unpermitted or both. This is a growing problem, and frankly, it's linked to Lynn's concern about people owning 15 or more units in the, you can only live in one, so what are you doing with the rest? You're speculating or you're renting them out. You're in the landlord business. This is all about money. And what I'm doing right now is parroting what Attorney Mark Friedman put in our newspaper, right? There are two sides to any unit renovation, large, small, or otherwise. One side is the county. A person needs to go to the county and pull a permit, and they can't exceed the scope of the permit, right? What they got a permit for is what they did. If it electrical work, electrical sub-permit, plumbing sub-permit. But, and for the most part, that half is being satisfied, because that keeps the government off the unit owners behind. But not always. What we are seeing on the other side is the association not authorizing the work, and that's important. Regardless of whether a permit was pulled or not, before any work commences, there should be written approval from the board. And before the board gives that permission, they should be looking for very specific things to protect the association. First is insurance. You want to see a certificate of insurance. You want to make sure that the right things are on the insurance. Your property manager or anyone here at Yuko can look at that for you, or your attorney. One of the things I see most often is the contractor checks off exempt on the workers' comp. There's a little box. Are you exempt from workers' comp? And they check yes. Well, that means that he and he alone is going to be working on the property. That is rarely the case. He's going to bring in casual workers to help him. If that box is checked, I don't let him work in my building. The second thing is, there should be on the cert of insurance, your association, Chatham E, as additional insured. Right? When that's not on the certificate of insurance, what that contractor is doing is basically giving a lowball price to get the job, but he's laying off some of the insurance liability onto the association. And who's paying you for that? Nobody. So you want to make sure you have that. Second thing is, you want to make sure that there's licensure of the contractor. Not all work requires licensure, but most does. And you want to have that. Most important are the engineering plans. If they're doing anything with the walls, anything with plumbing, anything with electricity, electrical work, you want to make sure that an engineer has created plans. And I'm not talking about a sketch on a piece of paper. I'm talking about what engineering plans look like on plan paper with the engineer's stamp. If you don't have those things, work should not commence. And if work does commence, you need to get a hold of us, and we'll get down there and we'll stop it. You, the boards, if you don't want a particular, if you don't want work or anything going on in a particular unit, you can send a letter to UCO. I will suspend guest calling privileges or contractor calling privileges for that unit. But you have to authorize me to do that. I do whatever you guys tell me. Once you have all that documentation in place, an expert should be looking at it, not you, the board. None of us are qualified to see if something's engineerable, whether it's safe, whether the licensure is true, you have a property manager. Let your property manager look at that. They've been trained. They went to the same 18 hours of University of Okeechobee Boulevard that I did. We know what we're looking for. Or go to your attorney. Let your attorney check on this, and that's another thing. In some cases, you, the board, don't even have the authority to authorize a renovation. In some cases, you need a membership vote. And really, your lawyer will tell you, based on your documents, whether that's the case or not. It's really on a case-by-case basis. So we're doing our best to help you. We're exercising more control at the gates. When we find contractors that are working without permits, without authorization, we're barring them at the gates. It's not perfect, because they'll find a way in, believe me. But we're doing that. We're working with the building department. We're getting the word out there. If you're doing it, it's going to be in my report. It's going to be in the newspaper. We're shining a light on it. But the first line of defense, as Fausto said, is you, the boards and the unit owners. Keep an eye on your buildings. Somebody should be walking that building once a week. What are you looking for? You're looking for paperwork in the window, covered up windows that don't look right, trucks, commercial vehicles, whatever. Go knock on the door, you find out what's going on in there. A lot of times, things get snuck through because it's hot out. Nobody goes and walks the building once a week minimum. So that's all I got to say about that. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any. I kind of thought you might, Lynn.
Whatever happened to, which I thought was a good idea, when somebody was going to do renovations,
Yes.
They would have to get the board's approval, and then the county would not issue a permit until they saw the building's approval. I know that was down.
This was something that we were promised a year ago or so, and there was a change of administration at the building department. Fausto and I met with the director of the building department and her staff and her attorney on Monday, and I actually sent that meeting came from a letter I sent to the department with lots of pictures and saying we need help, and they're telling us that anything to do with common element, the boards are already signing, but I know that this is not true. So this is something that we're gonna hammer on the county for a little more. I know that it's legally possible only because some of the municipalities I work in outside of Century Village do require that. Town of Palm Beach, if a unit owner wants to redo their bathroom, they will not get a permit unless they have a notarized letter from the board with 2 board member signatures or the board member and a manager and the seal. It's North Palm Beach, same thing. I know but the question is it administratively doable in a huge county like Palm Beach County? I think that's where really this is coming down to. So we're trying, but again, it's you guys. You got to keep an eye on your building. I remember when I was a kid here at Century Village, if my grandfather picked up a screwdriver, somebody was on top of him saying, "Pete, what are you up to? What are you doing?" And it aggravated him, right? Because he did a lot of his own work. But that's just the way it was back then, and I think we need to get back to that, right? Anyway, that's all I got, and that's enough. Oh wait, fellow has a question.
Somebody's doing a renovation, only the kitchen, or only a bedroom.
Right.
The contractor who comes in has no license, but he's a very good specialist. We know this. He also has insurance, liability.
Okay.
Okay, so he's covered as far as the association concerned. If something happens, we are covered. Do we
Not
have to
necessarily.
notify? Do we have to notify UCO? Do we have to notify to get permits and so on?
Look, you're the board, and ultimately you're responsible for any consequences to any decisions that you make, right? Now, you're talking, obviously you have somebody in mind, that's fine. Remember, not all renovation work requires a permit. For instance, a simple change out of kitchen cabinets with no redesign of the kitchen does not require a permit. But you, the board, should be approving it in writing, whether it's permittable or not.
Do we have to notify UCO?
No, absolutely not. Now, if you've got a problem and you want to keep somebody out, by all means come in. We'll help you any way we can.
Okay.
But don't assume that because the person doesn't have a license and then you probably want to see their insurance and have your manager
Definitely.
and get it on the books so that, God forbid something happens, you say, well, my manager looked at it and he said it's okay. An expert has given you guidance, and that'll give you a lot of liability cover, God forbid something happens.
I have a
This is
question.
number one, more important than license.
I have a question for you. How does a person get insurance if they don't have a license to do business?
Anybody can purchase insurance for a name of any company. You don't have to
He just
have
said he doesn't
license.
have a business.
He
I
doesn't have to
just
have
said-
license. He doesn't have to have license. You
Okay.
open up a company without the license.
Yes,
It's done
and-
every day of the
I
week.
kind of left this out, so I'm glad you brought this up. There are companies and tradesmen who perform work that do not require licensure in Palm Beach County or the state of Florida. But what you, the board, should be looking at in that case is what's called a BTR, a business tax receipt. That means that they are licensed to operate as a business of any kind in Palm Beach County. That's the bare minimum. Even a handyman, I would want to see that. And listen, every board is a little different as far as how strict they want to be on this, until something bad happens.
Yeah, you could check online as regard to permits, by the way. Palm Beach County has a website. Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact web address, but if you could go to their building permit website and you could put in the apartment number or the owner number, and they will tell you the status of the permit in, with regard to that condo. Just something that happened in my building this past week. I had somebody who bought an apartment. Originally told me, I'm not going to take down any walls, I'm just changing things in the kitchen. And I said, fine. Comes to me the next day and says, you know what? I decided maybe I'm going to take the wall down between the kitchen and the dining room. That sets a whole new ballgame. So I immediately said, look, I'm going to confer with my attorney and with Donald, and I want to find out exactly what the procedure is so that you know what you have to do. So I use Mark Friedman for Becker as our attorney, and I questioned Mark, and the first thing Mark told me before any wall is taken down, you got to get a report from a structural engineer that it's not a load-bearing wall. Once you get that certification from the structural engineer, you can go back to the association board, not the owners, and present it to the board, and the board will either approve or disapprove taking that wall away. And it was very clear to him that, do I have to have that brought to the owners of the building? And he said, as it is not a common area, but a common element, and it's inside of the apartment, the board has the final decision. So it's important that the board be on top of what's going on. And I've been asked the question, maybe Donald, you'll answer this question. People have been asking me, is somebody going to go back and check over the past 3 years to see if a board was irresponsible in allowing certain renovations to be taking place? Or was your insurance company going to go back over the past 3 years and check on your association's construction? And
All right, so this is apparently going around the community right now. Sam, you and I talked about this. I'm not aware of any government effort to go back and check on, but I fully expect at some point our insurance carriers are going to ask for it. They're already doing common area and exterior inspections before every renewal. And that's just, that we didn't have that sometimes once every 5 years. Now a human being is coming and checking the electrical room, checking the patios, checking the outside of the place. And we've had to do things, some usually minor, to get our approvals, to get our renewals. I fully expect at some point they're gonna wanna see the inside of these buildings. These insurance companies have a lot of people working for them, and their only job is to find reasons not to honor claims. And a carrier representative coming in and saying, the as-built show a wall here and the wall is gone. What's that all about? I think that's in the pipe. So it's, you know, but it's not coming out of the faucet yet, but I think it's coming.
But I will tell you that, just let me say one thing. I will tell you that I was notified this week that certain associations in the village, their roofs are quite old. And they were notified by their insurance company that in order to renew their insurance, they have to present a contract that they're going into contract to replace that roof. It's not every building in the village, but if you come into UCO, the insurance person, he'll tell you which association and which buildings must present a signed contract from a roofer that your roofer is going to be replaced within the next year or so. Otherwise, you're either going to quadruple your premium or you're not going to get insurance at all. And again, I'm specifying these are for elderly old roofs that have not been changed in the last 20 years.
I've had situations since I'm here almost 10 years now, where an individual, sometimes me, sometimes just a regular unit owner, called code enforcement of the building department. And the code enforcement officer of the building inspector came to the building for that specific thing. And while they were there, they walked the whole building and said, the windows, ding, 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 no permits. Bang, got another one. And then they went out to the emergency, to the electrical room, found some modification there that wasn't permitted. If they're on the property, they can basically write you up for anything they see, not just the thing that they've been called for. It has happened. It's not common, but I can tell you that it has happened in the past.
But also, we had a question.
Yes, if, let's say the board doesn't approve a renovation that doesn't need a permit, and the unit owner goes ahead and does it anyways after they enforce it.
You take legal action against the unit owner. That's simple. Yes, ma'am.
How many members of the family can be on the board?
I know, that's why
Okay, this one's a little tricky because there's a loophole.
can't do nothing about it.
Forget about family members. Me, my mom, and my sister all own it. Family members are not what you're really asking me. What you're asking me for is people who own the same unit. That would be me and my wife. We are co-owners of a unit. Now, according to statute, both of us should not be on the board, okay? Only one unit owner can be on the board. However, there is an exception. If there are less candidates who put the paperwork in for the annual election than there are seats, then another unit owner from the same unit can be put on the board. So right now, my wife and I are both on the board. My wife is the secretary, I am the president. However, if this year comes and we have 6 people put their intent to runs in before the 40-day cutoff, one of us would drop off the board, right? Now, if there was 7 came in, then there'll be an election, right? But that's the only reason. Now, the other question that comes up almost always after your question is, does each of those co-unit owners have a vote? And the answer is yes and no. On board votes, my wife and I both have votes, right? And often we cancel each other out because, well, if you've been to dinner with us, you understand. But on a membership vote, we only get 1 because the units are voting. So that's the only thing. That loophole that exception was put in because small associations are having such a hard time putting together a board. And so it is in my association.
Eva's got something she got to say.
Eva, go.
On that topic, the ID office, our forms require 2 signatures from board members. We will not accept 2 signatures from 2 people on the board that live in the same apartment.
Think about for a reason why. This is very, very similar to the question we received before of why does a board member have to come in? That's just a pain in the neck. It's because we want to make sure that everybody on that board knows what's going on. And you could see a situation where a husband and a wife who are both on the board might approve someone without the rest of the board knowing. Then you might have a person that you don't want living in your building living, and once they're in place, it's very difficult to get them out. So we want to get on top of that before it happens. It's all about you guys knowing.
I'm gonna take that, then I'm gonna finish my program. Go ahead.
Is there a rule that a renter cannot be on the board?
No, unless your documents say specifically, for instance, there's nothing in my documents of my building that says a board member must be a unit owner. Why was that? My theory about that is, in the old days, what if somebody in the building had a son who was an architect or an attorney or an insurance professional and was willing to serve on the board and bring that expertise to the board? You want to have the flexibility to allow that. But there are associations here at Century Village have made that you must be a unit owner to be on the board. So it's to your documents, that's what it would be.
I'm gonna finish, and then we're getting into the last part of it. But the last part of your presentation says, what is your responsibility? We've been telling you what UCO does, what WPRF does. This is what your boards are supposed to be doing. You need to have a board of directors. One person running the building is not a board, okay? Holding annual elections is a must. Even if you don't have a quorum, you still have to send out the paperwork. You still have to have the meeting. Whether you have a quorum or not, that paperwork needs to be available. You must maintain your building, like Donald said. Walk your building. When we went Monday to the building department, the legal department of Palm Beach said to us, we should have a monitor, a hall monitor, have somebody from the building walk the catwalks once a week to see if there's any unlicensed work or something in disrepair. Work with your management company. We discussed this. Use them, call them up, make them available. I know that there's some management companies that don't like to do that, but you're paying them, and they should be doing it for you. Another reason why you should not self-manage, because not everybody, you should really have a CAM to help you with what's legal and what's not legal. And most self-managed buildings, we have a few, they're not licensed CAMs. And they're jeopardizing, if they do something and it's illegal, or they make a suggestion to do something that is not legal, that person is making themselves liable, and I'll explain why shortly. Make sure that the proper paperwork for sales and renters to be presented. Make sure that if you have any questions, come to UCO, we'll help you through the paperwork. Don't send a realtor, don't send a renter, don't send a purchaser to come and pick up the paperwork. It's your job to make sure to review that paperwork. I cringe when I see associations coming, picking up paperwork and saying, well, I need to notarize this, okay? You should go back and you should review that paperwork to see that that decision should not be made by one or two people. You should have a meeting, and that paperwork should be checked before it gets dropped off to UCO and after it comes back from UCO. If you have a question, this is something that comes up quite, paperwork gets dropped off because only one person was there, never looked at it. Paperwork comes back, there's no finances, there's no letter how much income they have. And now the other board members look at it and say, well, we're gonna reject this person because we don't know how much money they have, or can they afford to pay it. Once that investigation has gone to investigation, you're on a timeline. Whereas if you look at it before you submit it to UCO, you have all the time in the world. Notify the broker, notify whoever you have to notify. Say, listen, there's no finances here. I need to know, I need a letter, person's on Social Security. I'm gonna give you a personal experience. 5 years ago, these 3 ladies came in and they were all upset. A 90-year-old officer dropped off a package. Nobody looked at it, they were all away. They came to pick it up, and the woman has no income. She's 62 years old. She's buying an apartment. She has no finances. So the three ladies that came in, the president, vice president, and the treasurer, want to figure out why they should or how they can turn this woman down. And I sat with them and I said, well, did you get a chance? No, we just dropped it off. We never looked at it. So I'm looking at the base. Look, she's 62 years old. Did you ever think that maybe she just applied for Social Security? She had $5 million in the bank. The bank statement, they never went that far. They just looked and said, oh, there's no finances here. She had no income. Okay, because the line, if that was done ahead of time, it would not have been an issue. And I'm trying to explain to these three people, but she has no income. Ladies, she's got $5 million in the bank. You know, on basic, 5 years ago, on basic interest, she could live there. Okay? If you look at the paperwork before you drop it off, you won't have those questions. Okay? And bring it back to the board and review it. If you decide to reject somebody, make sure, personal experience, make sure you have a meeting with who attended the meeting, what time, what date, who was there, and how it was voted. Very, very important for you to do that, okay? All members, all board members should be certified. Everybody knows 90 days from the time that you were elected, you should have certification. And that's coming into play even more as with these new rules and regulations. Association should attend delegate assembly. A lot of information, I know we have a lot of politicians that come, I know that we have a lot of jibber jabber, but there's a lot of information over there that's handed out. Financial reports, state of UCO, you get a chance to speak up. We have not missed the delegate assembly in over 2 years. I made sure that we have one every month. And we try to be as proactive as we can to get the boards there, and they've been responding. I was really surprised that July 5th we had everybody told me nobody's going to show up. Guess what? People came. So I'm very happy. It's going to be, my presentation is going to be over in 10 minutes, and you're going to get 30 minutes to ask questions. I'm sorry if I'm boring you, but that's okay. All right. Board members should have a list of every single unit owner in their building. We just had an incident yesterday where somebody came into Jerry that a person wanted to get in touch. She's the new president. She didn't know who was living in her building. Okay? A list, every officer should have a list of who lives in the building, how to contact them in case of an emergency. Corporate seal, we discussed it before. That corporate seal should not leave the building. I mean, the average is 40 miles. If you're in Canada or you're in New York, you're over 40 miles. Okay? It should be readily available to be able to conduct business. It's up to the board if you have a new owner, if you have a new renter, if you have a new occupant. Notify them that we have movie channels, 590, 591, 592. Notify them about the UCO report. Notify them about the website. Notify them any information that you could give them to make their life easier. We have a newcomers package. If it's a new person, they can either get it at UCO or at WPRF. When they get their IDs, that gives them a good cross-section of everything that's done between the two groups. Inform them of the community website. A lot of people today are computer savvy. Let them go on there. Let them get the information. Again, we discussed this already. All work in the building should be done by licensed and insured tradespeople. Okay? Very important. Every board member should explain to a new owner what a common element of the building is. They don't own 10 feet in the back of their building. You know, a lot of people are complaining, well, somebody's smoking in front of my door, and they shouldn't be smoking. okay? If you have a rule in your building that you're not allowed to smoke, tell them you gotta smoke in the parking lot or in your apartment. Again, it's up to you, the officers, to explain to these people. Because if you explain it to them at the very beginning, it makes your life a little bit easier. Two new things that you have. The Corporate Transparency Act. You have to do that before January 1st, 2025. That's where you have to notify the U.S. Treasury Department of who the officers in your building are. We've written on it, it's in the paper, Joanne just had something, we did a handout at Delegate Assembly. We are working now with at first, the management companies, Seacrest and Pruitt, said they would not do it. Now they are changing their attitude, they will do it. You must file, okay? Very important. Could be a $500 a day fine, and you could go to jail if you don't do it. So, they must do it. Contact, if you're not sure, come into the office, we'll explain it to you. You can go on the computer and check it out. Up until July, every building that had more than 150 units had to have a website. It's now 25. If you have 25 units or more, if you have 26, you have until December 31st of 2025 to have a website. Now, what you need to list on that website is all your governing documents. Any work that's being done on your building, you must post insurance papers, licenses of everybody that's done work in that building. That all should be on there. Minutes of your meetings. Anything that any unit owner might request of you has to be listed on that website. Now, to make matters worse, for those of you that think, well, I don't live here, I'm in, here or not, DBPR was just given $750 million to get involved with boards that are not doing their job. Up until recently, unless you stole money or you didn't have a proper election, you put a complaint in, they sent somebody down to check out your building and they didn't care. That's now being expanded. If you have a board that's not doing the fiduciary responsibility, that's not taking care of the buildings, they're going to follow through, and there are going to be ramifications for those people that are on the board. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to add to that, just to make it clear, up until now, if you made a complaint to DBPR about something that didn't involve elections, money, or records, that the board just wasn't following the documents of your building, they would say that's a civil matter, you could sue, take up to court. No longer the case. Now DBPR will enforce against associations or association board members who do not follow their own documents. So that's something it's a little bit tighter now. So you need to be careful. You're on the board. You want to make an exception to your bylaws, to your rules and regulations. Make sure the whole board is on it and that there's meeting minutes to cover you, because you're going to find that the state is finding board members responsible to follow their own docs.
Donald, could you explain? Some people don't know what DBPR stands for, what it is.
DBPR is the Department of Business and Professional Regulations, divisions of timeshares, condominiums, cooperatives, and mobile homes. That's the police of condominiums in Florida. They're the condo cops.
And we all want to do that.
Yes, sir.
Why would anybody want to be a board member?
Exactly.
Don't think we're hearing this all the time.
Yeah, I mean, like, what do we gain out of this? Not pay members.
Exactly, and we're hearing that. And look, we've heard this every time there's a new regulation or a new task that must be completed. We always hear, nobody's going to want to be on the boards. We'll have no boards. Yeah, yes, you will. there's always someone that will come up and step in, because the alternative is for an association that cannot produce a board, excuse me, guys, is receivership, and that's something you obviously want to avoid. When it comes down to it, somebody always steps up. It's, you know, I've been in this a long time, both in New York and here. In my life, I've never, since I'm 17 years old, I've never known a cooperative or a condo not to put together a board, to become defunct.
Yeah, but
Because
now-
you all have a,
Yeah, but now, forget about civil, you're talking about criminal.
yeah, well, there's a lot of shenanigans going on. And that's, you know,
What is the, what's
and sometimes those shenanigans get people hurt, and that's what this is about.
She's asking what receivership is, where a court appoints somebody to run your building.
Well, let's say an association, excuse me, guys, second time. All right, let's say a situation arises where a board ceases to function. Nobody wants to be on the board, nobody's paying the bills, the place is falling apart. The state is not gonna let that happen. It's not in anybody's interest to have the buildings falling in on themselves. People, human beings live in there, right? So what will happen is, any unit owner, or any other person for that matter, can go to the courts and petition for a receiver to be assigned to that association. Almost always, excuse me, Patrick. Patrick? Patrick? Somebody,
Do I have?
so, almost always, that petition will be granted. And that, what will happen is the court will assign a person, a receiver, who is typically a CAM, like me, or an attorney. He is now the board of that building. And by the way, that's instantly gonna cost the unit owners $50,000 extra, because that's the minimum charge that a receiver, he doesn't work for free. Then he's gonna go around the building, and he is going to bring that building 100% into compliance with current building codes. And he will assess each of the unit owners for whatever that is. Don't pay, foreclose. Don't pay, foreclose. Eventually, he gets to own the whole building. That's what receivership is, and that's why it never happens. Both here in Florida or in New York, I've not been involved in a building that went into receivership. Why would they? The unit owners have money tied up in the building, asset. So, I hear what you're saying, but almost always, people bubble up to the top and say, fine, I'll be on the board. It's just a matter of who wants it the most.
So who protects the board member if there's something wrong? Nobody? I mean, it's our own money?
Yeah.
We're doing that for free and we're gonna get penalized for...
All right, so you're absolutely right. What maniac would be on the board if they were gonna be held personally responsible for everything that might go wrong, or a decision that turns out to be a bad decision? It happens. You have insurance. You have directors and officers insurance. And that insurance protects you against bad decisions. Also crime, right? Now, hang on guys, there's a lot of chirping, so it gets a little bit, anyway, you have insurance for that, because you're not a professional, right? And sometimes businesses make decisions that are not good ones, it's all wrong, just turned out to be wrong. You're covered for that, unless a case can be made that you knowingly and willingly went against your own bylaws or went against statute. That's a very difficult thing for any person or the state to prove, because you could always say, I didn't understand. But that's when you would find you don't have coverage. But you're covered, let's put it that way. Otherwise, we'd all be insane, all of us. Joe?
Yes. Just a little bit off the topic here.
Yes.
But something that had came up in our association about a year ago. This relates to the investigations that UCO sends to some firm to look about backgrounds of people. We had a case, right, where somebody applied for to buy a unit.
I'm going to ask how many units.
And we read his application. His application said he had a criminal record. We get that to UCO. UCO came back with the investigation report from the firm, whoever you give it to, and said, no problem, they raised no question. Then we find out the whole investigation report is $200, of which 100 goes to UCO and 100 goes to whoever you're using. What kind of investigations are we getting? And if we how can we rely on the firm you're using to give us any kind of information? Why use them? We read the report itself and we did the investigation, but it was on the report, it was on the application given to us by the potential buyer. He had a criminal record. It was not looked at whatsoever by the firm you use.
Okay, now obviously I can't speak to your specific case because I don't have it in front of me, but I can give you a brief overview of how this works. Number one, this $100 to UCO and $100 to the, that's horseshit. It's not true. All right? No, it's not true. I'm gonna continue to answer your question. I was listening very carefully when you asked it, okay?
Okay.
Just as far as the fee goes, UCO charges the maximum that's allowed by the state, which is $150. Now, for the most part, the actual investigation charge that we receive from our agent, Scott Robertson Associates, is less than $150. However, there are instances where an investigation, because of where that person lived, costs in the thousands of dollars. We're not in it for profit, so we don't care. We just do it, right? We eat it. And every year the report more or less shows a wash, because some of that excess money that we collect is used for legal opinions. We have a lawyer that gives you a no-charge legal opinion if you're of a mind to reject an applicant. I can tell you that the investigation package that we purchased, that we're contracted for, is far more expensive than anything your management company is going to do or anything that you can do as an individual. We buy investigation services that even I think are unnecessary. Now, I'll give you an example of one where we spent way more than. This is the most extreme case, so I remember it. We had an individual, female, who was born in Iran, emigrated to Israel in the 60s, moved to Kew Gardens, Queens, lived there for 30 years, rented in Century Village for a year, and now she's buying a unit. We had to pull investigations from Israel, Iran, New York City, and Florida, and we paid for every one of those. And then once the report was turned back, and she's fine, by the way, right? The board, they were all from Nebraska or something. They saw Iran and they said, "We want a legal opinion." Meanwhile, this wasn't the Ayatollah Khomeini. These were Persian Jewish people, right? From Kew Gardens, and we paid for that for another few $100s. It was upwards of $1,500 to do. In your particular case, if you discovered a crime that our agent didn't pick up, I'd be very surprised, and I'd like to see that. Now, just because he didn't, there is a scope, and a lot of that scope is based on. Remember, when you do investigations yourself, or if we do them on your behalf, we're subject to the Fair Housing Act, federal, and the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act. And a lot of what you're getting back, and that's the reason you use an agent, and that's why we use an agent, don't do it ourselves, is to make sure that you or we don't run afoul of those two federal laws. And that's a pretty serious thing. You bring in what you got, and we'll take a look at it.
I will definitely bring in.
Come in today.
And I just wanted to say this.
Yeah.
This is serious. It was on the application that he gave it. Have you ever had a criminal record?
Right.
Charged with a crime? Yes. We Googled him.
Yeah.
And we found that the crime was
What was the crime? Just
walking around in another association, carrying a gun and threatening people.
and it was in the Century.
That wasn't picked up by your investigator.
All right, but you're gonna, without even, and you and I are gonna meet, obviously. But what I'm gonna find, and I'm so certain that I'm just gonna tell you, is that there was an arrest but no conviction. Arrests don't count. Convictions are what counts.
You know what? If somebody within another association walked around threatening people, we saw it on Google, it was on TV. that he was threatening people.
Yeah.
He even admitted he was walking around shooting animals in the place.
Okay.
And he pointed his gun at people. And if that, if you can't pick, your associate firm can't pick that up and tell us about it, there's something terribly
Okay.
wrong. That's all I have.
Hi, Sam.
How are you? Thank you for the meeting. I just want to ask you 3 short questions that anyone can answer.
All right.
Well, the first one is you mentioned that down the road, the insurance companies are going to ask for a look back of 3 years with a possible criminal. I'll ask all 3. You can answer or address them.
I think that's going to happen. I think that's in the
Has it happened in other associations of Century Village and other places of Century Village?
Not that I am specifically aware of. I kind of catch the same text message rings that you're in, so no, I don't know that specifically.
All right, the second question is, has there been a change in the entertainment schedule that usually was Saturday nights? I'd like to know about that. Was there a change recently?
I don't know what you mean by
So is it, what night is it usually scheduled for?
For a show?
Saturday nights?
Saturday night
Okay.
in off-season.
Right.
And then we will post a schedule in season because we generally have 2 to 3 shows during the week. Well, 2 during the week and then, of course, 1 on the weekend, over
Thank you.
Saturday.
The last question is, I've been to other Century Villages like Boca and Deerfield, and I have to tell you that their grounds, the common area grounds, not the individual associations, absolutely fantastic compared to here. If anyone's been there, I'm sure you would agree. And I was wondering, what?
I do agree.
Okay, and I was wondering what's happening for the grounds themselves here, what plans we might have to improve the general grounds here.
All right, Sam, we have a beautification committee that plans out and approves projects to the grounds. They've been on hiatus now for some time. The chairman is walking, he's running away right now because he has to answer. But Stu is going to, at some point, reconvene that committee, and we'll start putting together a plan for the place could use some refreshment. No two ways about it.
I would also, well, and that's it. So I can tell you, I spent 7 years down in Deerfield as the VP there. There is they have a company that comes in and they use the same company that Boca uses, and you've made the connection because you can see how beautifully it's maintained. He has very high standards and he gives you your money's worth, but he is expensive. He is expensive.
And that is a concern. How much money or how much more extra are you willing to pay on your assessment for plants? Me personally, I love nice landscaping. I'm willing to pay, but
Right. And I do also want to mention that we will be at the Kent Pool this year. We will be taking down the old hedge line, putting in palm trees and bushes, decorative. Okay, so where I can, I will spruce things up, and the committee has always been good about approving monies on the landscaping line so that I can do that and remove things that are 50 years old and tired looking and make everything look nicer, like the fencing. New fencing is going to start going in around the pools, and it will not look like it's a prison. It'll really elevate the look of the area. So that's all coming for you, and that's all approved by your committee when we present things. They also want to see things, continue to go upward, so you have to say thank you.
Can I just make one comment? Go back to your question about the entertainment schedule. If you check channel 590, you will see 24/7. We run, Eva provides me with the schedules for both here and the Hastings. So you'll see, I try and get them posted every Monday. So for the coming week, you'll see what's going on at the clubhouse and at Hastings. So the shows and, everything that's going on. So.
Thank you.
One more question. Sorry. Okay. The walkways, a lot of the walkways around the village is trip hazards, especially going from the clubhouse to the Plymouth area and stuff like that. It's really pretty bad, and I reported it more than once, and nothing has been done about it. That's number one. Number two, every time there is some type of renovations, or let's say the Hastings pool that was done, or any work that's being done from the village, takes tremendous amount of time. That, you know, it doesn't take 3 weeks to power wash, you know, the deck of a pool and have the pool closed for it. You know, but same thing with the Hastings bathrooms they were closed for months. For that, you know, you get a contractor in there, doesn't take months to redo a bathroom.
I want to get to the walkways first, because that's what he said first. Sir, walkways are my responsibility. I eye up every bit of those walkways every week, Fridays as a matter of fact, this morning. But with the trees and the palms, these bumps and lumps do pop up pretty much overnight. If you're walking and you see a trip hazard, please take a picture of it and send it to me, Donald Foster, yukomaintenance@gmail.com. If you read my reports, you'll see the repairs. We just finished patching a bunch of walkway repairs just 2 weeks ago. I don't catch everything. I'm one guy.
No problem.
You know, driving around in a car and sometimes a golf cart. Not too much walking, although I'm working on that too. But you see something, and I really do rely on you guys. But when we get it, we're jumping on it fast, because you know what the consequence is if somebody takes a header. All right, and I'm in that positions more than I'd like to lately. All right.
And the amount of time for repairs?
As far as the paving repairs on the wall,
Went to pools and...
well, that's more Eva's boat. So
Okay, so as an example, Kent now is closed. We did an acid wash. So they started Wednesday filling the pool back up, but it has to filter. So that's going to take extra few days, so we're going to get that pool open on Monday. It depends on what we find. You know, we start a process, Kent also. We removed the concrete around the pool itself to put in a 4-foot paver perimeter. Wound up being almost 8 feet because there were so many cracks in the concrete that it made more sense to extend the pavers. But then you have to realize those pools are 50 plus years old, you know, that have had very little work done on them. So we're literally, when you open it up like that, you have to rewire for the electrical, for the lighting. I mean, there's a lot of things you have to do, and you never know what you're going to find until you actually get underneath. So we're also going to start on doing the pool houses. So that's also going to close the areas down. But again, those pool houses have not been touched in almost 50 years. Okay, and no major work. We're talking probably Band-Aids. We've been putting Band-Aids on for years. Now, as far as Hastings go, that was closed for months. So what did we have with that? That, we pulled a permit. So what was included in that permit was we had to replace the carpeting because we had the fire in the women's sauna. The carpeting that we had in there was 2 weeks old when the fire set off the alarm system and all that dirty water came down and flooded the carpets. Now we have, you know, dry out the walls, we've got to replace the carpet. We did locker room work on both sides, men and women. We had done the showers years before, but now we were catching up the rest and doing that. You never know what you're going to find when you get behind the walls. And then you have to have change orders. Then you have to have inspectors that come on their schedule, not yours. All right, and then the women's sauna really slowed things down. So while the locker rooms were ready to go, we really couldn't open because that permit had the ladies' locker room, ladies' sauna on it. So we had to wait for the ladies' sauna to be done. So it was closed for months. Plus we did a lot of work on the pool deck while we had it closed. It was an inordinate amount of time. But believe me when I tell you, we want to get it open for you as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Because we don't want the phone calls and the complaints. I'm a pleaser, I want to know that you're happy, okay? But there were reasons for it.
Okay, accepted.
Yes.
A quick question. There seems to be confusion about replacing kitchen cabinets because
Can you
on the
speak into a
county
microphone?
website,
use the mic, Flynn, because they can't hear you.
The mic right in front of you. There's the mic right there.
there seems to be confusion about kitchen cabinets, because on the county website, it says if you replace what's there,
Like for like.
like for like, but in parentheses, it says that applies to 1 and 2 family dwellings. So I was told by some contractors that in our buildings, we needed permits. I was told by some contractors that they don't. So, but right here, I have it right here, it says 1 and 2 family dwellings. So I'm led to believe that in our buildings, we need permits when those are replaced.
That would be the call of the code enforcement officer.
What?
The call of the code enforcement officer.
Okay?
The county.
The county has to decide that, not you.
Now, Lynn,
Even though it's printed
now,
on the
Lynn, we
website.
all know where we live. And my experience the last 5 years is most of the kitchen renovations involve installing a kosher kitchen, which is almost always going to require a permit because you have plumbing redesign and you have electrical redesign. You're creating 2 where there was 1. So right off the bat, that's going to require a permit. But if there's any question, you put an email, you know how to do it, you put an email into code enforcement, they will come and they'll tell you.
I did.
That's what they're there
I got
for.
2 different answers. That's what I'm saying. It's confusing, it's
Not
very
easy.
confusing.
This gentleman back,
Yeah.
Patrick, right?
My question is,
Yes.
how many units could a person owning an association?
It depends on your documents. My documents have no restriction. I can buy all of them if I want. Others have made amendments to their documents to say you can own no more than 1 or no more than 2. The board can do that. I know Century Village associations that have that in there. So it depends on you guys.
All right.
Kelly just said his building is limited to 2. That's in his documents.
I got a call last night from somebody who asked me about their documents and rentals and wanted me to interpret what is written in the documents regarding can you rent once in a lifetime, can you rent according to hardship? And my answer to her was very simple. I'm not an attorney. My board doesn't want to call an attorney, it's going to cost them $1,000. I said, I don't think it's going to cost you, but I cannot give you a legal opinion upon a document. And it's something that there are 307 associations, 307 different documents, that govern that association. And you have to abide or change your documents according to what your board and your attorney would like you to have. And like Fausto said before, there are many documents that are dated 1999. Well, it's 2024, folks. Time to get it into the 2024 mode. Just while I have the mic for 2 minutes, just want to add 2 things. And this again, I'm referring to the 3- and 4-story buildings. You need to have a milestone report and a structural reserve study report. And they have to be done by the end of this year. I had a group, very nice group from one of the Wellington buildings come into me yesterday. Well, we had a lot of work done 3 years ago, and the engineer said everything is wonderful and terrific, and why do we have to have a milestone report now? So I tried to explain to them very nicely that the state of Florida has issued this because of what happened in Surfside, that 3- and 4-story buildings have to have an engineer that will certify that your building is safe. If they come and they say you have to have a renovation, then you have to go to a phase 2 report. And the engineer has to come back, and the GC has to come back, and they have to recertify with the county and the state that your building is safe. And every owner in that building has to get a copy of that report. And then the second thing you have to do is you have to have a reserve report that will cover the next 10 years. And as Fausto has said many times, it will not be cheap to be living in these buildings for the years to come. You could expect 100, 200, or maybe more in your association dues once these things go through. The county has become very, very strict, and the state has become very, very strict with regard to how the status of your finances and the building. One of the things that was just passed on July 1st is that if an owner comes to you, wants to see your financial records, wants to see minutes, you have to give it to them within 10 business days. Otherwise, your board is liable. These are things that are just being done for transparency purposes. They want the boards now to be as transparent as possible. And that's any board, any association, any board of the village, that's what you're going to be held accountable to. I just have one more thing that I wanted to mention to you. It's, it's not a very comfortable thing, but what happens if you find somebody has passed away in your condo? What procedure do you follow? This happened to me twice in my building, so that's why I just want to bring it up. And if you get Shauna's weekly report, she brought it up as well. First thing you got to do is you got to notify the sheriff. I had 4 sheriff's cars by my building yesterday because somebody had passed away. The sheriff comes, you notify a family member if you have a case of an emergency form, which I have for everybody in my building. And if it's a renter, you have to notify the owner, and there is a procedure that the sheriff will tell you to follow with regard to having the body removed, etc., etc. One final thing that I want to say is that for those of you who have prospective buyers, you should sit down with them after you've approved them, give them a welcome package, which will list what their responsibilities are to the association and what the association's rules and regulations are. This way they have an idea. They just don't come in and say, hi, welcome. They have an idea that this is what I have to follow, this is here, this is there, etc., and have them sign for it. And I think it's a very good practice to have this welcome package for them, specifically for your association. That's it.
Could I make a couple of observations, please?
Sure.
I'm in charge of the beautification, and in beautification we had basically we take care of the entrances in Haverhill and Okeechobee. Because of COVID and some deaths to people in the committee, we kind of slowed it down, and then we were going to put up bushes and hedges around main areas, especially Gulf's Edge, but because of the fact that there was the prospective construction of new buildings, they're going to rip everything out. We did not want to do anything because if we spent money, it was going to be destroyed, and we didn't want to do that. So we're waiting now until after the hurricane season, and we will get back to work, and we will make notices. We'll put notices in the newspaper and in other areas so that anybody that would be interested in becoming part of the beautification committee, we would love to have them. However, let's be very realistic about this. Most of the hedges and trees and so on, Donald Foster is in charge of that. When you walk around the village and you see people going through the bushes to cut corners, we always tell kids cross on the green and not in between. Well, we have people walking through the bushes because they don't want to go to the end of the corner and walk around. You destroy the plant life here, and there's nothing you can do about it. You want to walk over and tell them that don't do it? You can get a punch in the nose, so you don't do it. You have people with dogs walking around and peeing and crapping all over the grass, and it's a problem. You want to go over and tell somebody, you're walking the dog, where's your plastic bag? And you'll see 90% of them do not have it. It's an issue that we have been dealing with for quite a while. We put up a sign that says 25 miles an hour. Do you know, all you have to do is stand where the sign is and watch them go 50 miles an hour, and they don't care whether it's a person who lives in Century Village or it's an outsider. Yesterday, I watched the police give tickets out left and right for people who didn't stop at the full stop and also speeding. No matter what you do, there is very little you can do when someone doesn't care. Now, one other observation. You live in the unit. You have a dollar and cent investment. if you are on the board or the only one on the board, you're protecting your investment, and unfortunately, you're doing things for other people, they may not appreciate it. But you have to do it, and then move. I mean, the alternative, if you don't want to do it, and you don't want to take the responsibility, move someplace else. But if you remember, this place was built as a retirement community where people came in and they never left. So you had a whole building filled with people who are involved in the building. What do you have now? You have people who move in because they like the area, and then they take off for 9 months out of the year and look at and turn their head and say, screw everybody else, I don't really care, you take care of the building. Well, if you're a board member, then you have to tell these people what's up, and you have to virtually force them to do the right thing. Or tell them to get out. It's as simple as that. So it's a responsibility that you have to accept. And unfortunately, what was is not now, and you have a lot of people who are inconsiderate. One other example, please. People lived here permanently. Now we have people who come in and buy a unit and then rent it. Whose fault is that? It is the board's fault to allow that to happen, and as a result, the more and more you allow that to happen, the more and more problems that you're going to have. How do we know? Every day. Every day, we get people coming in asking us what can they do, and we tell them, one, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to give you legal advice. However, slightly we suggest, well, if I was in your shoes, maybe I would do this, and they thank us very much, and that's it. But these are problems that you have. And they have been coming up over the last 5-8 years, and it's changing the whole dynamics of Century Village. And unfortunately, if boards don't act and take care of these problems, it'll never go away. Thank you.
I just wanted to quickly piggyback on something that Stu said about cutting through the bushes. So we've got this major issue in the parking lot at the clubhouse. I have no bumpers in the center part of the parking lots, and I've got people zooming across all the lanes, cutting in between cars to pull into the next lane. And all I want to say is, the car is doing all the work. Why are you being so lazy and foolish? You have an accident in that parking lot, we're going to call the police, you're going to get a ticket. And the rule is, the law is that you're still, even in a private community, supposed to follow the arrows as posted. So that means go all the way down the lane and then come around. Don't risk cutting through, because if you hit pedestrian, imagine how that changes your life. You've got a potential lawsuit that can take your life, turn it upside down, never mind the guilt you're going to live with and what it's going to do to them. The car does all the work. Don't be lazy. Follow the arrows. Please do it the right way. Thank you.
I've seen a bus do that.
Before, I'm reading the law, I'm reading exactly what you're talking about. It says items not requiring a permit, and when it comes to kitchen cabinets, exact replacement only with no change in configuration of electrical or plumbing in 1 or 2 family dwellings. So that means I'm interpreting that if you're in a condo, you're going to need a permit in order to do it.
Right.
And I'm reading it right out
I
of
have
here.
it also.
Yeah,
I needed a permit.
I went to the county, they gave me a straight answer. Anything in a condo place, you must get a permit.
right. So I know it's a little ambiguous, but it's pretty straightforward. If you're living in a 1 or 2 family house, you don't need a permit. Everybody else needs a permit.
Contractors don't know that.
Oh, they know.
All they gotta
Oh,
do
they
is,
know.
all they gotta do is read. Yes,
They don't need to read.
yes, ma'am. Get it? Yes.
Hi, Judy.
Our building is only 16 apartments.
Right.
Do we still need to do the law thing that?
Yes.
Yes. And Mike,
Yes.
yeah.
Now?
We have a condominium that has 4 units, and they have to do everything that I have to do. I'm sorry, you've been waiting a long time, man.
Yeah.
When I was looking at my certification, there's nothing on there. How often do you have to have that done when you're on the board for
Okay.
4
The-
years?
The certification is good for 5 years, assuming that you remain on the board. But, no breaks. Now, starting with after July 1st, you must maintain a 4-hour certification course to start with, and then a 1 or 2 hour update every single year. So you have to go to those courses every single year. Even like I said, if you skip a year, then you gotta start with the 4-hour class.
4-hour class online or is it person?
No, right now you gotta go in person. It's only in person. It's free, yes.
Possibly have a class in the evening for people that are on the
All right.
board that work, they can't go to the class.
Right now, nobody's giving the class because, excuse me, right now, nobody's giving the class because the law firms or management companies that give it haven't got their new syllabus approved yet. So right now, nobody's taking the class. I heard this yesterday. Once, Becker's usually are, and DBPR also gives the course. I don't think DBPR will come at night, but we might get one of the law firms to do it. But yeah, no, I get it. You have workers, you have people that work for a living on your board.
We're trying to give you as much information as we can for you to stay on top of it. Make sure that, the days of just sitting by and doing nothing are gone. You're gonna have to be active, and the people that are here are gonna have to be active, because otherwise the consequences, they're gonna have to be major changes. If we don't get cooperation from every single 309 association, then we might have to consider doing something different. Yes, sir.
It becomes obvious that the changes in the law put Board of Directors members at higher risk. Can we get somebody to review our insurance to see whether additional insurance, etc., can be had so we at least get additional protection?
Julia, send me an email on that. I'm going to send it to our insurance chair and our agent. If you want additional coverages, I can't imagine that they wouldn't be able to provide it, but they'll tell you whether it's necessary.
Right, but we need somebody to first figure out what additional coverages would be apropos. In other words, you can take out all the insurance in the world. Here
It has to be
it's,
the right insurance.
it has to be the right insurance, especially based on the new regulations.
All right, my time is up. I want to thank everybody. Yes, all right. Next month will be, but you can come back next month.
But Becker, we can register online and we can do the thing on Zoom. We don't have to go in person.
Well, right now, nobody is giving the class because a new law was enacted, and none of the law firms or none of the management companies have yet got their new syllabuses approved by DBPR. So right now, nothing is happening, but you should hear pretty soon.
I was told, I registered
Okay.
for Becker to do the classes on Zoom.
Well, again, I don't know. We're not 100% sure. If he thinks he can sit there for 4 hours and you need a certification, and those records need to be kept by the building.
Right.
Okay, but you're still going to need a 1 or 2 hour update every single year.
Yeah.
So, come, have a free lunch. Go to the HOA condo. You'll learn a lot of stuff there. They have 3 or 4 times a year. You gotta go. You have to stay educated, and you gotta make sure that whatever decisions you make are the right decisions. And I forgot to thank Ruth, our editor of our UCO Reporter, for being in charge of sign-in.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right,
Thank you, gentlemen.
everybody, have a good
Thank you,
weekend.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Your questions were really good.
truly is. Hi, I'm sorry, I owe you a phone call. I'm sorry. Let me just